Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a Thursday night. Welcome to the show right here on Sitback on Channel 1 Dialogue TV and, of course, our PodHub platforms. This is Sitback with Shaq and Anu.
It is, and it is a Thursday night, and what a Thursday night it is.
Oh my God, what a last few days it has been.
I tell you, right? If this letter, I mean, I don't think anybody has, anticipated a letter this much in the history of the world. And here it comes. Now the letter has arrived in the form of an email, and well, apparently that's not acceptable in the strictly legal terms that we are kind of dealing with these days. So apparently a letter might arrive by, I don't know, express mail tomorrow.
Yeah. And did you know that the president's flight from the Maldives to Singapore was the most searched flight in the world for today? Right? Everybody just wanted to try flight today.
Absolutely. And mind you, it wasn't just all Sri Lankans, okay? There were a lot of other people just making sure
It's been a crazy couple of days, and I'm sure it's going to be a crazy couple of more days in Sri Lanka at the moment. Even though we are basically, I suppose seeing the lighter side of it, things are getting difficult. Things obviously are difficult at the moment. Today we have a very, very special guest on the show with us. And of course, it's time for us to introduce our special guest on the show. It's Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. She's a member of parliament from the National People's Power. Dr. Harini, thank you very much for coming on the show, and good evening to you.
Good evening, Dr.
Thank you very much for having me, both of you. Nice to be on the show with you.
Thank you so much. We have lots of questions. As you know, most of the questions, of course, will be definitely coming from our viewers. We have a few questions. As you know, the show is done in a very candid manner. It's sit back. We're chilling at home. It's the questions that obviously are circling around Sri Lanka at the moment. And I mean, we just want to basically, just let you know what the questions are, and we'd be more than happy to hear your side of the stories. Anu?
That's right. And of course, we every day we do have a poll that is kind of retrofitted to the guest or, what's going on around in Sri Lanka. And today is no different. And without further ado, let's have the poll. So as usual, it's going to be a yes or no answer that we are seeking. Right now, you'll see on your screen today's poll, and it is this. Does the NPP have the biggest influence among other political parties at the Aragalaya? Yes or no? Please WhatsApp your answers to 077-669-1590. At the end of the show, just before we conclude, we will let you know how the responses stand. Dr. Harini, what do you think?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think I can claim to have the biggest influence. We are part of the Aragalaya for sure, right? And for us, the Aragalaya is something that goes beyond Kota Gogama also. It's an Aragalaya, it's a people's movement from throughout the country. And we've been very much a part of that, whether it's protests outside as the NPP, but also as part of the Aragalaya movement itself through our various organizations, whether it's as a trade union, whether it's as the student movement or the youth movement, whatever it is. But we've been also quite cautious that to sort of respect the plurality and the diversity of the Aragalaya movement, and that's not claimed or owned by any single person, individual part or party, which is why when we participated in common activities, we uh, did not participate as NPP. Many of us, sort of recognizable faces, were very careful not to be seen there unless absolutely necessary. But we support it because it's a people's movement. We are citizens of this country just as much as any other individual. So and many of the aspirations or the goals of the Aragalaya are very well aligned with what the NPP stands for as well.
I think that
Despite
is where
what
the misconception is coming about, Dr. Harini, because it just, it came right from you. Because I think that is one of the reasons that lots of people have, at the initial stages itself, have sort of said, listen, there is a massive NPP influence in the Aragalaya. It started as a people's movement, but it looks like unfortunately, it's being hijacked by the NPP. And because, like you said, the ideologies actually are almost the same as to what Taragalaya is standing at the moment for.
But
Well, I wouldn't
before you
say the
answer,
ideology.
let me just say
Yeah,
that the fact that it's only Anura Kumar Disanayaka who can actually, brave India. Guti noka berenda puluwang ඒ මනුස්සයාට විතරයි කියලා කියන එක. It's you know what I mean. If you walk in there, any other politician is pretty much risking bodily harm. Other than Anura Kumar Disanayaka. So you know what I mean.
Well, I walked in there also. Didn't receive bodily harm. I think several of my colleagues at NPP and in JVP have walked in there without bodily harm. So I don't think only Anura, but Anura not being bodily harmed got a lot of attention, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah.
So to answer, yes.
Go on, doctor.
Answer your question. I think ideologically the Aragala space is very diverse, right? I don't think there's much agreement in terms of political ideology. But if you look at some of the demands that the Aragala has been standing for, things like the anti-corruption stuff or a change in the political culture, a systemic change, those are things that we've been talking about for a long time also. Those are very much a part of our political campaign as well. So there is an alignment in the kinds of demands we are making. I think there's difference in how we want to set about it. I mean, I'm not sure, for instance, when we say system change, we all agree about the nature of that system change. I think there's a lot of diversity in that. There's a lot of difference in opinion. But I think we all agree that there needs to be a strong anti-corruption movement in Sri Lanka, that we need to cleanse politics of corruption. I think we all agree that there needs to be fundamental change in the political culture of Sri Lanka. That the kind of privileges that politicians take for granted, that's not appropriate, right? That politicians and our elected representatives also have to be seen as any other citizen in the country and enjoy the same. I mean, it's another profession, so there's no reason why they should have excessive privileges that are not enjoyed by other professions, right? So things like that, I think that there's a lot of similarity in some of those demands. And also, I think the other reason is that we and particularly the JVP and also the student union, the Socialist Youth Union, the Socialist Students Union, are well versed in protest, right? I mean, they know, they've done this. So they were very much a part in organizing some of the stuff there, right? And I think they led some of the, like the chants, how to organize a protest, how to be careful during a protest, so that you don't put yourself unnecessarily at risk. All those things are many of our organizations are well versed in how to do that. So, so I think that experience meant that they provided that input into some of how things were organized. And it's not just us. There are also other political parties and groups affiliated to other political parties in that space.
The violence that we see actually now, the case of the Aragalaya has, changed somewhat from a very non-violent element. Now we see quite a bit of violence directed at, not just the political apparatus of the country, but also towards more privileged, let's say richer people, the SEC A's and B's of this country. Now, is that also, something that, the NPP, the student unions, the Antare as we call it, or the Inter-University Students Federation, is that also something that they are versed in? Because a lot of people tend to blame the Antare element for leading the violence.
Okay, so first a clarification. USF is not part of the NPP or the JVP, right? So that needs to be clarified first. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that there seems to be a perception that left-wing movements have an ingrained sort of hatred, envy of people who do better, right, or who are materially of a different class. I think that's a very simplistic understanding of what left-wing politics is, right? Certainly, in a left-wing political ideology, there's a critique of the class system. But that critique of the class system doesn't necessarily mean that it's based on envy and jealousy and sort of trying to tear down the wealth or to take away the wealth of another person. Essentially, it's an ideology that's based on a critique of exploitative conditions, of exploitation of others, and of social injustice, right? And it is the capitalist system in Marxist theory is premised on a system of exploitation. So that's where the difference lies between a capitalist mode of capitalistic mode of economy and a socialist mode of economy. It's not based on envy. It is based on an understanding of exploitation and social injustice, right? So I don't think I've ever seen the USF attack or any left-wing movement attack people of wealth or people who are better off simply because they're better off, right? I mean, I'm not sure I understand how that fits in with what the Aragalaya was doing either. So maybe I'm misunderstanding the question.
Correct.
Anu?
Are we stuck or no? Okay. No, but the narrative seems to have moved. From that point to, I mean, now look at when you immediately come out with the term Sahodara, that you will address me as Sahodara, or anyone in power as Sahodara, that is a little beyond socialism. That is comrade for me. That is communism. So clearly either, whoever is at the grassroots level not understanding the policies of, what the JVP and the NPP stand for, or let me look at it this way. Arguably, we can say that, the bulk of the people in this country are the exploited masses. You have been championing their cause, their fundamental needs, and of course, their mindset for the longest time. But yet, how many seats do you have in parliament? There's a disconnect for me. Because if you were talking to me, you would be my primary representative in the legislative body, but you're not. So that's why I say that the Aragalaya played very well into your requirements, Dr. Harini, right? I'm saying not that you planned it, but it played really well into your kind of politics. And, if I were you, I'd capitalize on it too. I'm not saying that you did. What do you say?
Yeah. Well, no, there's no doubt that there's an alignment with what the Aragalaya stands for and what we stand for. I'm not arguing that point at all. I mean, we are thrilled. That's something that that we as a political party have been saying for years is now being said by the entire country almost, right? That this demand for change, the demand for more just world, the demand of less exploitative conditions, demand of a change in the political culture, demand of a less corrupt system. These are things that we've talked about, and we've been laughed at for saying these things, and now it's commonly spoken about, and that's wonderful. That's great. So there's nothing at all for us to be embarrassed about that, or to say no. There's no commonality between what's being said in the Aragalaya and what we are saying. Of course, and we do think that our politics over the years influenced the current moment, right? I don't think you can take that away, right? Because if say, for instance, hadn't had over the years, or also others in the JVP hadn't kept revealing about the corruption, people wouldn't have known about it, right? So those are issues that were then picked up by the Aragalaya, right? And understood as the reasons for the economic crisis we're facing. So there's a difference in saying that the Aragalaya has the demands of the Aragalaya and that resonates with us, and to say that we own the Aragalaya. We don't own the Aragalaya. No one owns the Aragalaya, right? But for us as a political party and a political movement, the sentiments expressed in the Aragalaya, the spirit of the Aragalaya, if you will, resonate very much with our own political goals and the spirit of our own political movement, right? So that's it.
Right, we got a couple of questions. So we have a couple of questions. Yeah. I want to get back to what you said, Dr. Harini, after this question, in terms of revealing the corruption that UNRWA has been doing over several years, as a matter of fact. We'll get back to that question right after this one, which is actually sent in by Gayan on your in right now. Will you support Sajid and SJB to guide Sri Lanka on the road to recovery, or do you have another agenda?
Well, we are a political party which has its own agenda. And I think having an agenda is necessary for a political party, because every political movement, every political party has its own agenda, right? Just as much as SJB and the UNP have it, we also have our own agenda. So we will cooperate with anyone, not just the SJB and Sajid. We will collaborate with anyone when our agendas are aligned, right? The question, I think, referred specifically to whether we would work with Sajid and the SJB on the path to recovery for Sri Lanka.
Right.
Well, if we agree on the conditions necessary for the path to recovery, there is nothing to rule out a collaboration. But for us to work together, there has to be agreement on what we want, how we want it done, right? And if there and I've said this before at a previous in a previous interview as well, that there also needs to be a similarity in our political cultures, right? How we operate, how our party is structured. If it's very different, then that doesn't make for an easy collaboration. And to be honest, I think we are different, right, in that sense. But there are instances, and there have been instances, where we have worked together on specific issues. I think we will continue to do that. For instance, at this present moment in time, almost all the opposition parties are completely in agreement with each other about what needs to happen, right? And we talk to each other and we cooperate when necessary. So, but we are also different political parties with different agendas. Otherwise, there doesn't need to be different political parties. We could just be all in one group together, right? But we are not. We are separate because we have differences. And I think those differences are important. And it's up to the public to choose between those differences.
Dr. Harini, on that question that I was wanting to get back to you in terms of revealing the corruption that UNRWA has been doing in Parliament, and not necessarily in Parliament, also outside in different media conferences or so. Just a couple of months ago, you also had a very sort of an open forum where you read all the files, basically, that were collected by UNRWA. My question is, why did you wait for such a long time if you had it with you for such a long time? And what happens to those files after that? I mean, it just looked at as if it was some sort of celebratory event. Nothing happened after that, or did something happen after that?
Well, actually, many of those files have been included cases that we had handed over to the relevant agencies for investigation. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, there is legally, I'm not a legal expert, so I'm not sure whether I'm saying this correctly, but as in that a private citizen or an outside group can't initiate investigations and cases on corruption, right? The cases are handled by the CID and the cases are prosecuted by the Attorney General's Department. So when we have received information on corruption, what we usually do is provide that information to the relevant authorities, right? And many of the cases that Anura spoke about, we have already done that, right? Where we have credible evidence, where we were able to collect enough evidence, we've handed it over to the relevant authorities to investigate and prosecute. But as you know, Shaq, in Sri Lanka, the CID and the Attorney General's Department are not independent of political interference, right? So the cases which are investigated and the cases which are not investigated are based on a political decision, not on the availability of evidence or not. So many of cases the files that we handed over are still stuck in some drawer in the CID or in the AG's office, right? Some of those cases the investigation started during the previous government, but got stuck somewhere. And then some of them were, this Gotabaya Rajapaksa appointed a commission to look into what he called political revenge or something, right? And many of those cases were dismissed, right? So, a lot of the corruption cases that were initiated came through information provided by the JVP. So that particular event was held because I think there was a challenge that Anura accepted in some media, in some interview where he was told, if you have the files, show us the files. Right? And he said, okay, fine, I'll show you the files. Right? But many of those files have been handed over to the relevant authorities for investigation. Unfortunately, the investigations are not going anywhere.
Why didn't you tell people what was in those files? You know, who was created in the files? Who did the corruption? Basically, because you can't depend, in opinion, not depend on these two main political parties. I mean, they have been in bed with each other for the long time. Let's not kid around. You know, they are complicit in a lot of these deals. You know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your hole. I have scratched you. Kind of. It's not going to happen. Why didn't you let people know that it? Because if anybody said, okay, this is slander, this is accused you of, legally, you had the file. I think a lot of the people are upset that, Anurag, look, I have all of this. Nobody.
I think so you got the gist of the question, I think, because it was breaking up a bit, Anu. I think we got the
Yeah.
gist of the question. Dr. Harini, did you
Yeah, I got the gist
question?
of the question. I got the gist of the question. Actually, on that day, Anura invited people in the audience to pick up any file and give it to him, and
That's
that
right.
he would reveal the stuff in the file, and he did. Many
Right.
of those files he has already talked about in public, both inside Parliament and outside Parliament. So there's, I mean, it's not something that he hasn't talked about. There were some people who threatened to sue him. That has not happened yet.
Right.
So I'm assuming that the suing is not going anywhere. Because soon after there was a flurry of denials and saying, yeah, we're going to sue him. Nothing has happened so far.
So, Dr. Harini, let's talk about an incident that actually happened yesterday. I think there's a lot of clarity that is actually required. Now, before we do talk about that, I'm going to put up a Facebook post taken off your Facebook up on the screen right now, which basically is requesting everyone to actually come to the Parliament ground to Colombo. Basically, it says, what's the? I mean, obviously, after this particular post and posts of the individuals in your party that actually came up on screen, it looks like lots of people attended that protest, which unfortunately turned quite violent, and it turned violent for the longest time, and looks like all fingers are pointing at the NPP for instigating this protest that actually happened at the Parliament, or just outside the Parliament yesterday.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I'm really happy to be given an opportunity to present our version of what happened, or our side of the story. What happened was that we have been discussing for a while that ultimately the resolution to the crisis, the political crisis that the country is facing at this point, will have to be addressed by the Parliament, right? Parliament will have to act, right? And the fact that Parliament has not been more proactive in this has also been a source of contention with the public, right? This is where the whole Desiya Visipahama Epa slogan also came about, because they are utterly frustrated with the Parliament's inability to intervene meaningfully at this crisis moment. So we have been talking for a while. I mean, for one thing, the composition of the current Parliament is completely out of step with what's going on outside, right? There's 2/3 majority held by the Podujana Peramuna, which makes it very difficult for any kind of progressive action to be taken in Parliament, right? So leaving that aside, we still feel that Parliament has a huge role to play. And we've been talking for a while that there needs to be pressure on Parliament to do its job, right? And as a political movement, we need to also mobilize people to pressurize the Parliament to now start doing its job, right? And this is going to be critical in the coming days. So we were there from morning. We had organized protests around the country, including in several parts of Colombo, demanding the resignation of Gotabaya and Ranil Wickremesinghe, and also building up a movement to pressurize parliamentarians to take necessary action, because by that time it had been declared that tomorrow, 15th, Parliament was supposed to convene, right? There was absolutely no intention for us of occupying the Parliament, because for us that doesn't make sense, because the Parliament is anyway made up of the people's representatives. So it is already owned by the people. There's no need to occupy that. And our main thing is that we need to get Parliament to work for us, not to take it over. It's different from like the presidential secretariat or the president's house. It's not the same logic that applies there. And it's also like ultimately the symbol of democracy. So, you know, I mean, that needs to be protected. So that our protest was outside Parliament, at the Parliament roundabout, right? And we had been there from morning, and it was a very peaceful protest. All that we were doing was slogans, and we were on either side of the Parliament Road and across the barrier. There was no problem. We were there from 10 o'clock. I was there from about 10 o'clock myself. I had left because I had another meeting. So this is this is hearsay, right? So I was not an eyewitness to this because I was not there when all of this happened, because I left by about 4:30. Lots of people had, anyway, since morning, people had started coming, right? People around Colombo, from various, from Kottawa, from Kaduvela, from all kinds of places, people were coming. The crowd was growing. It was still very peaceful. When I left, there was no problem at all. But around 5:36, there were more people arriving, and more people, and the later it got, the more confrontational it became, right? Where then people started really pushing against the barriers, right? Yeah. People who were part of the NPP who were there did try to control that and to say, look, this is not what needs to happen right now. Let's not do this. And they did try to control what happened, but it was just not possible, right? It was just not possible. And at some point, our people withdrew to the back, right? Because it was becoming quite dangerous. There were several groups there. I'm not sure who was managing them or who was instructing them on what to do. But it became quite confrontational, and it became something that we also failed to control, right? And that is what happened, because when they started pushing against the barriers, the police started attacking, and the police and the army started attacking quite ferociously. So there was tear gas, there was beating, and there was confrontation, right? And since we were also responsible for the people who were there, we tried to take some of the people out of the scene also, because there were children, there were women, there were older people, right? So many of our comrades, the word that you were somewhat skeptical about, Anu, I'd like to come back to that actually. Many of our comrades many of our comrades actually also really trying to get people out of there, right? And that is what basically happened. So it's not that we intended or we had any intention of occupying the parliament or breaking the barrier. We did and we wanted to, and we did organize a protest at that site, right? But
we're going to get back to that question. Yeah, we'll get back to that question, Dr. Harini, which is on your screen right now. Anu's going to read it out for you. But do you not think the updates and the posts that basically came from the representatives of NPP actually pushed the individuals to come to the parliament? And knowing that there was something happening to the parliament, when your posts are there, it automatically connects the NPP to it. So you can't blame anybody to actually point fingers at the NPP and say, listen, we had nothing to do with it now.
No. People would have come there because we asked them to come there. But if you listen to what we said, what we said was that we need to come there because we need to make sure that Parliament does its job, right? I don't think at any point, if you listen to any of what anyone said, that there was any talk of occupying the Parliament or attacking the Parliament, right? That was not communicated by us at all, right? I mean, we did ask people to come there to mark that, to make sure that we are there to ensure that Parliament, when Parliament meets on Friday, that they abide by the wishes of the public, right?
Dr. Harini, the next question I'll ask you in Sinhala. You're comfortable with Sinhala, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So, make a correction. Antare Lokuata Kagala, again, the misconception, like you said, Antare is separate to what the JVP and the NPP is represent, but unfortunately, I think in the people's minds, it's the same. So I'll just ask this anyway because this is one of our viewers, Chakshi. අන්තරේ ලොකුවට කෑ ගහලා ආවට රට බේර ගන්න ඒගොල්ලන්ම තමා කැම්පස් ඇතුලේ අහිංසක ළමයින්ව රැක් කරලා මානසිකව බිඳවට්ටන්නේ. ඩොක්ටර්ට අනාගතයේ බලයක් තියෙනවා නම් සිස්ටම් චේන්ජ් එක කැම්පස් ඇතුලේත් කරනවා.
අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මම විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ උගන්වපු එක්කෙනෙක් මාව දාන්න ශිෂ්‍යයන් හොඳටම දන්නවා මම රැගින් වලට කොච්චර විරුද්ධද කියලා. සහ ඒ රැගින් වලට විරුද්ධව මම ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙච්ච විදිය ගැනත් මම හිතන්නේ මාව දාන්න ශිෂ්‍යයන් සහ මාව දාන්න ගුරුවරයන් දන්නවා මම නැවතවත් මම USF එකත් එක්ක මේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ආචාර්යවරයෙක් හැටියට මම ගනුදෙනු කරලා තියෙනවා ඒ කාලේ ඉඳන්ම ඔවුන් එක්ක මම ලොකු වාද විවාද කළා තියෙනවා මම හැමතිස්සෙම ශිෂ්‍ය ව්‍යාපාරය වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී හිටපු එක්කෙනෙක් මොකද මම හිතන්නේ ශිෂ්‍යයන්ට අයිතියක් තියෙනවා දේශපාලනය කරන්න ශිෂ්‍යයන්ට තියෙන අයිතියක් සංවිධානය වෙන්න. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා ඒ හරහා ශිෂ්‍ය ව්‍යාපාරය මම ඩිෆෙන්ඩ් කරනවා. හැබැයි මම ශිෂ්‍ය ව්‍යාපාරයත් එක්ක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම විරුද්ධයි රැගින් ගැන. මම ඒක ගැන මම ඕනතරම් වාද විවාද කළා තියෙනවා විශ්වවිද්‍යාලය ඇතුළත් පිටත් මේ රැගින් ගැන. මම ඒක කිසිසේත්ම අනුමත කරන දෙයක් නෙවෙයි. ඒක අපි ප්‍රසිද්ධියේ කියලා තියෙනවා. මොනම හේතුවකටවත් රැගින් කියන එක අපි ඩිෆෙන්ඩ් කරන්නේ රැගින් කියන එක අතිශයින්ම ප්‍රතිගාමී අනවශ්‍ය දෙයක්. ඒකෙන් කිසිම හොඳක් කාටවත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා අපි හිතන්නේ. අපි දිගටම කියන්නේ රැගින් වලට විරුද්ධව ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්න පුළුවන් නීති රටේ තියෙනවා. ඒවා ක්‍රියාත්මක විය යුතුයි. එච්චරයි. ඒක කිසිසේත්ම අනුමත කරන්නේ.
Harini, getting back to what I was talking about, your the NPP and the JVP's involvement with the Aragalaya, how you have leveraged on that, or you have kind of coordinated together to kind of overthrow the government, and it has been successful on belief. The couple of times, the few times that I have walked amongst people in the Aragalaya and been part of the Aragalaya, the one thing that I noticed was the lack of a hierarchy or the lack of leadership. So there are multiple voices. Like I said, there are different ideologies at play, and multiple voices trying to be heard. And for me, I still feel that it's the perfect kind of opportunity for a well-organized, and organizations that speak the common man's language, socialism, in this case. Kind of, especially when people are down and out, when there's no gas, no fuel, no opportunity, no future, no education, no lights. You know what I mean? This is handed on a platter. So, I still strongly feel that,
Are you suggesting we should hijack the Aragalaya, Anu? Are you suggesting we should hijack the Aragalaya?
Not hijack, but close to it.
Yeah.
Own it, you mean?
Own it. Go even one step further. No, I think the Aragalaya has to remain as that diverse place with no one leadership. I think we think that's its strength. And we think that diversity is important, right? But like I said, if we represent the spirit of the Aragalaya, whether we sort of own it or not, we will benefit from it, right? And that's fine, right? And that's because ultimately, to implement the demands that the Aragalaya is making, you need a political party, you need somebody aligned with those values in power, right? And we think that we are aligned with those things, and if we get the benefit of that, yes, we are not going to say, oh no, don't. But we are not going to take over the Aragalaya, because that would ruin the Aragalaya.
Yeah, so actually that my earlier statement was a little preamble to what I'm going to say now. So in the Aragalaya, and amongst the IUSF and the so-called leftist socialist elements of this country, democracy, now you operate within a democratic framework, but voices of dissent are hardly tolerated. කොටින්ම කියනවා නම් පූසෙක්ම පෙන්නලා මේ බල්ලෙක් කියලා කිව්වොත් එතන ඉන්න 10000ක් කවුරු කිව්වත් මේ පූසෙක් කියලා ඒක පිළිගන්නෙත් නෑ. ඒ මිනිස්සේ ගුටි කණ්ඩ වෙන්නේ කොටින්ම කියනවා. So ඒ බල්ලම තමයි. ඒ කියන්නේ පූස බල්ලම වෙනවා. So දැන් ඒක අපි දැන් තියෙනවනේ අපි අත්දැකීමෙන්ම දැන් දැකලා තියෙනවා ඒක වෙනවා. දැන් ඒකයි මේ දැන් ගහ ගන්න යන වෙලාවට තාප්ප පෙරලන්න යන වෙලාවට පූල් එකකට පලා ඒක අසුචි විලක් කරන වෙලාවට නවත්තන්න බෑ. So this my worry, that the democratic framework might change because of this kind of hot-headed sentiment. Obviously you have reason for it, not you, but the Aragala has reason for it. But will this fundamentally change us as a nation?
Anu, I think it's a misconception to think that democracy is somehow contradicts a socialist worldview, right? Democracy, the two are not contradictory, okay? So, say for example, and that left-wing groups and parties can't be democratic, right? So, and for us, certainly as the NPP, I can't speak for any other group. I can speak for our group. Democratization of society is a hugely important thing. We have talked about economic democracy, we have talked about political democracy, we have talked about cultural democracy, right? So allowing for that plurality to exist in all the spheres that affect our lives, right? So and that is reflected in our party culture and in our party structure also, right? In how we make decisions and how we function. So, the term that you use, comrade, that's important to us because it indicates equality. There's no hierarchy, right? Anura is Comrade Anura. I am Comrade Harini. There's just because he's the leader and I'm the newbie, I don't call him sir or, my great leader or whatever it is, right? He's Comrade Anura. I'm Comrade Harini. His viewpoint is... Sorry?
You could just call him Anuvar. Why comrade? Because you must understand we are a nation.
I do just call him Anuvar when but in formal occasions rather than. But what is I'm very curious because I've been asked this question once or twice before as well, and I'm very curious about it. Why this beef with the term comrade? In the sense that I've been in religious spaces. I've been in religious spaces that I refer to brother as brother and sister, right? So what is this? What is this resistance to comrade?
Let me explain myself. Okay, so basically, yes. I'm a staunch admirer of the JVP. In fact, the last 2 elections, I have voted for the JVP. Right? Because I firmly believe in the ideals that you espouse. But we must all... Yeah, absolutely. So, but I have a big problem in the sense that I work in advertising and I know how branding works, for a party or a person or a product or a service for that matter.
Yeah.
But when you are a party and you are addressing a nation that has watched Hollywood movies since the 60s, let's say the present generation, and you have seen in the Cold War, the Russians, the Chinese, the Cubans, successive, Marxist regimes being labeled the other. When you buy into that, and comrade was something that we didn't hear from the JP, we heard it in Hollywood movies, Yeah, so so there's a big problem, that kind of triggers in somebody 30 years and above in their brains, like, oh my God, am I only allowed to have one kind of car? Am I only allowed to have one house? Can I not own more than 1 acre of land? All of these things get triggered. So for me, I think as a branding perspective, I think this is why the JVP has 3 seats in Parliament.
Okay.
Although
I completely get your point. I completely get your point, right? And that's how propaganda works, right? So the propaganda is always dominated. dominated by those in power. We were not in power, so we don't have control over the propaganda against us, right? Which is why I really appreciate this moment, because we can have this honest conversation and I can tell you without being interpreted by somebody else, right?
Right.
You can see me face to face and I can explain myself. Very often you hear about us from a third party who is often not even on our side, right? So I completely get what you're saying, right? That there are so many misconceptions about us and all this nonsense. I mean, I have aunties asking me whether, if you come to power, are you going to take up my car away? Are you going to, make us divide up our houses? All this nonsense, right? And these are from reading, like, Reader's Digests in the 1970s, or watching American movies about the Soviets and things like that, right? Because that is not what socialism is about. It's about a less exploitative system that, as Suni Handunhetty once said, it's not about being like Robin Hood, right? It's not about taking from the rich and giving to the poor. It's about
that is the biggest misconception, Dr. Harini. That is the biggest misconception that's going on about, right? Because if you say if the NPP is coming into power,
we are not advocates of Robin Hood, right?
It's good that it's coming out.
What we want. Yes. But that's the propaganda, and of course there will be propaganda, because us coming into the picture or us having power will mean that certain privileges and certain practices will have to change, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that, because for instance, I mean, we want a fairer tax system. We want a system where people who do an honest day's work gets a decent salary, that everybody, I'm sure you must have heard that famous term, we don't want only bread, we want bread and roses. We want bread and roses for everybody. That's the difference. We don't think the workers should have bread and some people should have bread and the other people should have roses. We want everybody to have a good life. We want everybody to enjoy themselves. We want a 4-day week for everyone, right? So that you can have 3 days to have a good time with your family and your friends, and to go out, to have a party, to go on holiday, right? So for that to happen.
Yeah, but how feasible is this? Because there are natural social hierarchies that spring up. You have blue collar workers, white collar workers, you have entrepreneurs, you have innovators, scientists, creative people. See, everybody does not fit into that same mold. I'm absolutely great that you're saying that everyone should have the same base. The same base, access to the same kind of healthcare, access to fairer taxes, and of course access to more socialist and welfare state constructs. Great, but at the same time, does this not? I mean, in multiple occasions, socialism, i.e., communism, has also not worked, because you find that there are the innovators, the leaders. They feel like, what, I'm not appreciated here. So I do this. I probably kind of safeguard, generate more money or give more opportunities. Why am I treated the same way? So these natural social hierarchies. So I think that's the fear. That's the fear that people have, that, we want to be individualistic and independent, and at the same time enjoy the benefits. So, actually, the bread, the roses, the cake, the icing, all of
it. Yeah. No, so let's look at it this way. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Shaq. Did you have
No, go on. Oh, I think we had another question that came up. We'll take that question right after the answer.
Okay. No, so let's look at it this way. This equality doesn't mean erasing difference, right? Yeah. Equality doesn't mean that everybody has the same thing. I mean, that would be utterly boring, right? That's not how it works, right? It's that everybody needs to have a chance at a better life, right? Just because of circumstances, you can't be deprived of an opportunity for a better life. And for that, there has to be an equal playing field for everyone, right? What you make of that equal playing field is up to you, right? Some will do better than others. That can't be helped. it might also be about individual difference. I might want a motorcycle, a Harley Davidson. You might want a Trishaw. Somebody else may want a Benz. I don't know. I'm whatever, right? If you earn and that's your aspiration, go for it, right? There's nothing to stop you. But there are certain things. Sorry?
Right now, I'd settle for seat on a bus, and nobody.
Exactly.
Nobody's armpit on my nose.
Exactly. But what we would propose is that while you give that individual freedom and choice, there also needs to be a really efficient, good public transport system that doesn't force you to find your own solution because you don't have a choice, right? Many of us have to, I mean, take me for example. I hate driving. I don't know one end of a vehicle from another, right? I've never owned a vehicle in my life. I still don't, right? And I am really frustrated by our public transport system because it's so bad. So I want a good public transport system, right? And I think there are many of us who would love to not have the hassle of having to drive yourself to work or your children to work or whatever it is. If we could have a good public transport system, it's good for the environment, it's good for our health, it's good on so many levels, right? But you want to go have you earn your money, you do your business, and you want to buy your vehicle, go right ahead. No one is going to stop you. But we will ensure that there is a good public transport system that doesn't force you to then look for private solutions because you don't have a choice otherwise. Otherwise, it means that you can't get to wherever you want. Similarly for health and education, right?
Yeah, let me just interject because we have one more question and we have absolutely come to the end of our tether when it comes to time.
This is the problem that we have with this question.
Yeah, okay. So, Anura Atulu Pirisa Balayata Avot, Ratata Avasya dollars, foreign diplomatic contacts, Digukal Rata Diunukaran Salasmak,
අනිවාර්යෙන් තියෙනවා. එකක් අපි බලයට ආවොත් අපි ගනුදෙනු කරන්නේ රාජතාන්ත්‍රික මට්ටමකින්. රටවල් අතර සම්බන්ධතා තියෙන්නේ පුද්ගලික යාළුකම් මත නෙවෙයි. රාජතාන්ත්‍රික මට්ටමක diplomatic relations. අපේ මේ වෙලාවෙත් අපේ diplomatic service එක කියලා එකක් නැහැ. ඒක විනාශ කරලා තියෙන්නේ. මොකෝ ඒක දේශපාලඥයන්ගේ පවුල් වලට රස්සාවල් දෙන තැනක් බවට පත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. අපි આવොත් අපි කරන ප්‍රධාන දෙයක් තමයි foreign service එක නැවත වතාවක් ඒ තිබ්බ තත්වයට ගන්න එක. ඒක professionalize කරන එක. සහ අපි අපේ ගනුදෙනු කරන්නේ national interest එකක් මත මිසක් personal agenda එකක් එක්ක නෙවෙයි. එතකොට අපි රාජ්‍යතාන්ත්‍රික මට්ටමින් ඒ ගනුදෙනු අපි කරනවා. අදටත් අපි තානාපති කාර්යාලයක ගනුදෙනු කරනවා. විදේශ රටවල් එක්ක අපිට සම්බන්ධතා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒක මෙහෙලා මම හිතන්නේ ඔය ප්‍රශ්නේ මම අහන එක හේතුවක් කියන්නම්. මම හිතන විදියට අහන්නේ මෙන්න මේ හේතුවට. අපේ රටේ තියෙනවා පොඩි බයස් එකක්. ඉංග්‍රීසි කතා කරේ නැත්නම් රාජ්‍යතාන්ත්‍රික සම්බන්ධතා තියෙන්න බෑ. එහෙමනම් ඉතින් ලෝකේ ඉන්න ගොඩක් රටවල් වලට රාජ්‍යතාන්ත්‍රික සම්බන්ධතා තියෙන්න බෑ. එහෙම බැලුවා නම් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහට ඉංග්‍රීසි ඔච්චර කතා කරන්න පුළුවන් මිනිසයාට කොච්චර හොඳ රාජ්‍යතාන්ත්‍රික සම්බන්ධතා තිබිලා එහෙනම් ඩොලර් ගලාගෙන එන්න ඕනේ නේද මේ පහුගිය මාස දෙක ඇතුළත. එහෙම වුන්නේ නැහනේ. right? ඉතින් එහෙම නෙවෙයි. ඒවා සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ මේ ඒ වගේ මේ නිකන් ඔය පොඩි හේතු වලට නෙවෙයි. තමන්ගේ diplomatic සහ diplomatic relations වල තියෙන ගුණාත්මක භාවය. හරි? ඉතින් අපි දන්නේ අපේ ආණ්ඩුවක් යටතේ ඒවා අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් ඒ හැකියාව තියෙනවා. ප්‍රධානම දේ අපි ඒවට දේශපාලනිකව ඇඟිලි ගහන්නෙත් නැහැ. අපේ පවුල් ඒවට පත් කරන්නේත් නැහැ. සුදුසු පුද්ගලයන්ට සුදුසු විදියට ඒවා වෘත්තීය වශයෙන් ගෙනියන්න අපි අවස්ථාව දෙනවා.
Dr. Harini, we are just at the tail end of the show, and once a question that I actually wanted to ask during the show, but of course, this is what we have. I mean, we obviously have a fantastic time with our guests, and we don't even realize an hour has actually gone by already. One final question. This is now obviously all this has actually happened so far, and thanks to the Aragalaya, now it looks like one stumbling block for everybody and all the political parties is the current Prime Minister, who's also the acting president, who needs to step down. From the NPP's point, why is it so important that Ranil Wickremesinghe has to step down? From the NPP's point.
Because he has no mandate to be where he is. He's a man who lost his election. He has no legitimacy, right? And we see that's one thing, right? So from a democratic point of view, it is absolutely wrong that he is in a position to which he was not elected, right? He's holding so much power when he was someone who was rejected by his own constituents. So he shouldn't be in this position. That's from a democratic point of view, that's fundamentally wrong, right?
Right.
And the other thing is, for the NPP, he is part of the problem. He is the establishment. He is the system we are trying to change. He exemplifies the system we are trying to change. He exemplifies the status quo and the establishment that brought the country to its knees. I know at this moment in time, we think it's the Rajapaksas who are to blame for everything, and they are to blame for a lot of things, right? And they sort of, they kind of personified a culture that was very damaging for our country, right? No doubt, okay? But they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones. Our indebtedness didn't start with the Rajapaksas. With the most amount of ISBs were taken between 2015 and 2019 when Ranil Wickremesinghe was Prime Minister, under his watch, right? This country started its downward spiral into this indebtedness, which we are now having to deal with, under his watch as well, right? So he is as much of the problem as anyone else. Corruption, I mean, it was under his watch that we had the bond scam, right? Within months of him getting into power, right? It was under his watch that that the Jaffna Library was burnt, right? He was the Minister of Education at that point. He, we saw through so much violence during his when he was also in government, right? So he is as much the problem as anyone else, and we don't think that people who are the cause of the problem will provide a solution. So, which is why he has to go as well.
Okay, so we're just into the last 2 minutes, Anu.
Yeah, okay, let's look at our poll. Let's look at the response to the poll. And just to refresh your memory, this was what we asked. It was a yes or no question. If you can have that on screen right now. Yeah, does the NPP have the biggest influence among other political parties at the Aragalaya? Yes or no answers only. You were supposed to WhatsApp your answer to our hotline 07766915990, and we have your response. I think it's firmly in the yay, and it happens to be 65%. Say the NPP has the biggest influence amongst the political parties at the Aragalaya. But we saw this coming. This is like a popular idea that's amongst the masses. So it is what it is. But
this is basically the votes coming in from everybody who is actually watching us on TV. At the same time, everybody's actually watching us on social media right now, which of course has been shared by quite a few people. So yeah, votes are coming in quite a bit. But coming back to the point what Anu was actually talking about in terms of branding, right? As far as NPP is concerned, and then your political ideology is also being as similar as the Aragalaya, this is not surprising one bit.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah. As I said, sorry, as I said, if we
offer my services to the
thank you. I might
yeah, and completely free of charge because I believe in you.
Anu, give me a call, take you up on it. You wouldn't know what hit you.
Yeah, including Rai, including Harshan and
don't
Anna.
make rash promises. Don't make rash promises.
Yeah,
You might actually be
not at
taken
all.
out on it.
Yeah.
Give me a call.
Believe
Give
me,
me a
this is
call.
not my this is not my first rodeo. So I've done branding for a lot of people and parties and elections. So yeah, by all means.
Dr.
Thank you.
Harini,
That'll be great.
thank you so much for being a part of the show. Really appreciate it. We always basically want the guests to come on the show and give us their side of the story because, like we said, lots of misconceptions are out there. This is not a media conference. We don't have questions lined up. We have no sources, right? We don't have any numbers, right? We say this to all our guests at the start. So just talk to us. Tell us what's going on because the people want to know exactly what's going on and we're with the people. And these are the questions that they obviously want to hear from our actually coming on the show.
No, thank you. I had great fun. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, and speaking so candidly. Fantastic.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Thank you, Dr. Harini. All the very best. And we shall hopefully have you back on the show very soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. That was another fantastic interview right here on the show with our guest, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Member of Parliament of the NPP. I know you are on a roll today. I couldn't get a word in.
No, because I very strongly, I strongly feel with very socialist ideas. I strongly believe that people should have the same kind of access to education, healthcare, opportunity. You know what I mean. I'm a great admirer of Karl Marx. All of them. But the thing is, how it gets interpreted by other individuals is problematic.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really good point that you actually brought up in terms of branding, as far as the party is concerned. Like you said, again, everybody basically thinks about every time you think about these ideologies coming up. It's the Hollywood movie that everyone has been fed into. So it's a really really good point.
Anyway, on that note.
Yeah, it's our Friday, and it's been another crazy week. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of the show. Got another great set of guests lined up for you next week. Very important week for Sri Lanka next week, Anu.
Oh yeah, let's see how it goes. Because I mean we are in the eye of the storm, as they say, next week, and let's see how it all turns out. And we'll see you on Monday at 10 p.m. on all of our platforms, including Channel 1 Dialogue TV. The View app, of course, our PodHub, FB, and YouTube channels as well. Then,
thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Have yourself a wonderful night and a great weekend. I will be back on the show once again on Monday night at 10 p.m. Have yourself a